channel. My name is Lindsay, and we are back planning for the very first month of 2024. And this time around, I wanted to do something that is definitely not on brand to what we know January to be, at least if you live in the northern hemisphere. I live in New England, and so it's definitely very cold, very gloomy. I haven't gotten snow yet, at least when I'm recording this, but definitely around January is when we start getting snow, and I absolutely hate it. So to kind of change my mindset, I wanted to kind of create something that just gave me the warmth, the summer heat that I really, really want so bad, and just opted to do more of a very graphic approach to a Western theme. Now, Western can be a lot of different things, and I kind of struggled trying to keep very simplistic images, not go too crazy and different motifs and stuff, but I just wanted to do more cactuses or cacti and more of a desert landscape. But because I was going more for a very graphic look, I didn't want to incorporate so much black, and I kind of relied more on my Archer and Olive acrylic craft pen. I think that's what they're called. I don't have them with me, but I wanted to do paint pens. And I've always had a good experience with these pens, but my God, it was horrible. I mean, I kept having to click the pen several times just to get the paint out, and I've noticed that the brand new pens that I had not used at all worked fine. Actually, it worked fantastic, but the ones that I've used before in the past, they were just giving me problems after problems, and a part of me really thought about maybe doing a whole different cover. I still wanted to do the Western theme, but I'll be honest, I really was not in the mood to start all over again, just because one, it's a brand new journal, and here we are with our very first problem of the year. But I don't know, I wanted to trust the process of it all, because I'm one of those that once I get one little whiff of a problem, I'm so totally checked out. I'm nope, I can't deal with it, and I'm just over it. And that's where my mind was. This whole theme, I think up until my habit tracker, maybe my playlist, I just was not feeling it anymore. But I wanted to keep going just because, I don't know, I know that paints are not my forte. I'm more of a marker type of gal, but I really wanted to try something different, try a different approach. I usually don't even make huge illustrations like this, but I wanted to challenge myself for the very first theme of the year, and it really challenged me, but I thought I was going to be genius. Now, you're gonna see this because this was such a problem. I was ready to just burn my journal to smithereens. I was this is my bullet journal for the year, and now I just want to destroy it. But here I thought I was having a big genius idea, and instead I opted for gouache because I thought that I'll be able to paint everything faster. It would take me basically little to no effort, but none of the colors matched in terms of the tone and the hue, and it just looked really horrible. So I ended up scrapping that and went back to the left side of my cover page. And that's because I had already pre-done my other layouts, and I just couldn't have the space to do another one. So I just slapped some tape on, taped those bad boys together, and just created this very small rendition of a calendar on this page. Now, I'll be honest, because it was a very last minute decision, I did not have anything planned whatsoever. I was just really winging it. Mostly it was anxiety taking the wheel, because I just didn't know. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't want to mess up again because I was ready to flip the table. I'm a very when I'm upset, kind of get a little bit aggressive in a way. But I just, again, continue to trust the process and try to do this very like weird typewriter font with the same navy colored, paint marker, and wanted to incorporate a little bit more of the gold, just because when I think of like the desert or a desert theme, I just think of those really warm Western, I think you'll call them like jewel tones. So I ended up doing that, and I still felt like it was missing a little bit of something, so I ended up I created a very small picture of like different styles of like cacti. So this one wasn't going to be the traditional like armor hands or armor arms. I don't know what you'll call those, but these are the more rounded ones that have the little flowers up top. And I still wanted to keep the colors very much on par to the cover page, so it looks very intentional, it looks very matching. But honestly, I just needed something to fill the page because it just was so boring to me. But I tried a couple of other things to kind of jazz it up, and I just kept hating it. And this page has so many like cutouts of pages on top of it that I was just like, okay, I need to put the marker pen down because everything that I keep putting was just ruining everything. But that is basically my tirade for the first couple of pages. But here we go, back to some sanity. We're doing the good old habit tracker and playlist. Now, it's the same as always, nothing too crazy. Only difference was that I had a larger notebook, so I had a lot of extra space to kind of play with, and I wanted to create something a little bit on the cool side of things. So I opted to do a bottom part like imagery of a scene, just because it took up some of the space that I didn't really need, because I don't really track too many habit trackers. I have it to help me with keeping track and memorizing certain things, but I am not like a diehard habit tracker, just because like sometimes I'm too busy and I can't be bothered to. So I mean, you guys can obviously put as many trackers that you like, but for me, I just kind of opted for a like desert scene. And usually when I've seen these like Western desert themes, I see a lot of like different, I guess, but there's a lot of uneasy leveling when it comes to like the sand and the desert, just to show that there's some movement, that there's some depth. And I really actually showed that too with my coloring. So for the sand, I actually wanted to go between gigantic jumps of color. So the first one I did more of a cream color, then I did more of a mauve color, a golden tan, and then a very like rustic brown, just to show that as you get farther away, it gets much more lighter because it's supposed to be closer to the sun. I kept the headers very simple just because with this theme, I was also going with a little bit more on the, I wouldn't say minimalistic side of it, but definitely more simple versus being too overly doodly. And that's because I was kind of testing the waters with a bigger notebook. So I'm usually more of like an A5, A6 type of girly, but I opted to do, I think this is like a B6 book, like a really big one. And I was a little bit intimidated by how much space there was, that I just didn't know where I wanted to go. So I just kept it super simple and just accented a little bit with some stars and sparkles, just because one, they look cute anyways, but two, they still tie in with the theme, especially using the same colors, because I just don't want the headers to be another thing within the setup itself. I want it to be intentional. I want it to coordinate with the theme, and I want everything to look, aesthetically put together. So I kept that simple. I tried also to be very aware of how much black I'm using. So I would really only use black ink if I had to do anything that was more towards like the structure of things. So for example, I did use my pen for my habit trackers, and I also used it for the calendar and the weekly layout, but that's all I really did. I wanted more of the colors to speak for themselves, especially because there's no harsh lines to kind of dictate very sharp boundaries between the different parts of like what I was painting. Ultimately, I kept the trackers super simple. I didn't do my typical like little plaid type of like filling in. I don't know what to call them, but I'll usually take like either a gray or a very, very light tan color and do like little, almost like, I don't want to say Gangnam pattern, but almost like, I guess, picnic like or grid like pattern. Here I was afraid to do that, so I just opted to use a marker that was more on the line of that mauvey pink as a undershadow, just to give it a little bit more pop of color, but also just so it kind of lifts up the boxes themselves, because at this point it was looking a little too boring for my taste, but I need something, and I was just afraid of really going too far into it like I've been doing, because for once I really loved how the habit tracker was coming out, and I just was afraid of wanting to do too much. And even though I know it is my journal and I do have the right to kind of experiment here and there with whatever I want to do, I'll be honest, I am human as well, and I'll tell you, I am like super critical of how I want things to look because I'm too much of a perfectionist for my liking. Like, I really love everybody's art. I love how people create things or just the way their brains kind of tinker. But with me, I'm so strict that once something is out of line, I feel like I have to like fix it. And that's just how my brain is. So definitely I am a little bit more critical of myself and how I want things to look, but doesn't mean I hate it or doesn't mean I'm being like super negative. I kind of talk to you guys like you're my friends, and I tend to just be very, I guess, raw with my emotions at the moment, or like how I'm feeling in the moment. So yeah, sorry, I don't want you guys to think that I hate it. I really don't. It actually came out really nice. But yeah, there's gonna be times where like I'm just a little too harsh, but I feel like as artists we kind of grow from that harshness, so I guess there's always a silver lining in everything. At this point in my playlist, since now we're kind of getting back into what I'm doing in the video, I wanted to actually go against everything I just said and opt for some color. Now, you're like, Lindsay, you're all over the place. And I'm like, yes, I know, because that's just how my brain and my crazy processing kind of works. But since I didn't do any cover albums, just because I haven't personally been listening to too much music, I wanted to give something that kind of still compensates for the other half of the notebook. So since I went really simple in my habit trackers, I wanted to give the colors that it was missing. So I kind of stuck within the same palette. I did more of like that cactus green, that golden brown, surprisingly a really well hued lilac color, that mauve, and a baby blue. Now, the lilac and the baby blue probably are like the weirdest colors you would ever think, but they look really nice. They kind of help with like the color blocking, and it's just a very stark contrast with everything, but it gives a little bit more of like a refresher. I just don't feel like everything is so super earth tone. It just gives like that little bit of a break that it was needing. So I really love it. I actually think that my playlist, even though it doesn't have any songs on it, is my favorite so far. Remember how I said that I pre-sketch my setups before I do anything? Well, this part of my weekly spread I had pre-sketched, and this is probably as big as like the cover page. And when I got to this point, I was really worried. Like, I was sweating bullets because I'm just like, oh no, I have to really use the paint markers. I didn't know if I wanted to continue with the paint markers at this point, just because it gave me so much like anxiety, stress, and just kind of ruined my vibe at this point, that I was really teetering on the idea of having something not look cohesive in terms of like the materials I was using. or whether I wanted to go through the pain of having consistency. And can you guys guess which one I ended up with? Because after my whole rant about these things and the stress that it took me to get to this point, I opted to do the paint markers. And you can even see that like I really had to keep like pushing down on the markers just to get some paint out. But it took me a while, and at this point I kind of just accepted fate. I accepted the punishment I gave myself, because even though it did take me a while, it probably, as crazy as it sounds, it took me about maybe 30 minutes alone to paint like half of the background this like mauve peach color than anything. And I just, honestly, if you guys were like, well, what were you doing for like those 30 minutes? Did you just like sit there and paint? Yes, I did. And I just watched some YouTube videos to kind of like get my mind off of it. But I actually really liked how it looks. It almost looks like an Arabian Nights type of look, which is not what I was intending. But I wanted something that had a lot more visual aspect to itself, because I wanted to keep everything really simple. And I even was thinking before I went in with all the paints and stuff of doing something a little bit more with like the headers for the days of the week. But I'll be honest, as soon as I finished this image, like this picture, I was gone. I wanted to just leave. Like, this is where I was mentally, just so you guys could understand. I'm one of those that once dinner's over, I'll be the first one to leave, but then your mom wants to say bye to everybody, and then you end up staying because your mom ends up having a whole other conversation that lasts like 20 minutes, but you still want to leave. That's where I was. I wanted to leave. I wanted to finish and just wrap it all up, but I was like, dang, I have to do the weekdays. So I ended up doing it, and I just did it very simple, nothing too extravagant. I just went in with my pen, did some black boxes, and I just went ahead and used the same like color for the backdrop of the boxes, because I didn't want it to be so plain. And actually last minute, instead of doing that mauve pink color, I wanted to put more of that golden, maybe mustard yellow color, just to tie it all back in, because I did feel like the pink was overpowering at this point. So I needed a little bit more like stronger jewel tone colors. So I did that, and then I just simply went with my micro pigment pen and kind of just went in with the days of the week. And we made it to the end, and boy, was this a journey, and a journey that I never wanted, but it came out really good, surprisingly, and I really like it. Even though it made me want to pull out my hair, but hopefully you guys love it too. And if you do, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. But until next time, bye!